Last time I proved a central result, namely Schur's lemma. I just remind you which was this, okay, given two irreducible representations of a group G, okay, which I denoted by gamma A, say by matrices or linear operators. Let me use the same notation as here. I think A or G, and gamma B, B or G. Okay. If so, this is on some vector space V A, and this on some vector space V B. If S from V A to B B is a linear operator such that S A this way, this one is equal to BGS. So, first you act with A, then pass to the second vector space, or you do it in the second reverse order. So, S is what they call an intertwining the two representations, okay. Or I saw you in the other talk, S is an people also say S is an equivariant map, it is the same idea. Then either S is 0 or, okay, S is invertible and BG is SAG, S inverse, or gamma A and gamma B are equivalent. So, this is the first statement, okay. Either it is invertible or, okay. The second statement is if, okay, say let us say T VA to VA, okay, is such that it commutes image and the range are the same in this case, then the theorem says T is a multiple of identity. Okay. Of course, it is for a multiple of identity, this equation is true. The theorem says that this is the only possibility. Okay. By the way, this result has some other consequence. I will just mention it. If you are, it comes if you at some point if you start dealing with matrix models of quantum field theory, then you will come across this result, Burnside's theorem, Burnside. Okay. Just let me say this. Okay. If, okay, in this case, okay, gamma A is an n-dimensional representation okay. Then any n cross n matrix can be written as, so I have told them that you have kindly said that if there are people who have questions, they can approach me or you, whichever. Thanks. any n cross n matrix can be written as m equal to some coefficients Cg Ag. I am assuming I am using the discrete notation. In the continuous case you may have some integrations on the group, but this what this says is that the linear combinations of these irreducible matrices coming from the group give you all matrices. It gives you the full matrix algebra. Okay. This is a rather serious result. Okay. But they are you can see somehow related. Okay. This Burnside's theorem is related to this Schur theorem also. Okay. Now I want to tell you a few things. I told you that a simple consequence of this result, that every irreducible representation of an abelian group is one dimensional. Okay. Abelian group means the group elements commute. We saw last time that means that every irreducible representation of an abelian group is one dimensional. Okay. It might have higher dimensional representations, but they will not be irreducible. Okay. For example, translations on a line, the only representation you get are basically by plane waves, okay, or some distortion of the plane waves or decaying waves or increasing waves. Okay. But there are two-dimensional representation, we saw that, okay, by upper triangular matrices. So once you impose irreducibility, this result follows. So we want to look at operations with representations and with groups. So okay, one, okay, the gamma is a representation let us say by matrices dg, okay. Then okay, this equation d at g1 d at g2 gives you d at g1 g2 which implies okay, d star, the complex conjugate, let us say d bar of g1, d bar of g2 is equal to d bar of g1 g2. Okay. So this is a complex conjugate representation. Let me call it gamma bar, say representation. Okay. There is no guarantee that gamma and gamma bar are equivalent. Okay. Gamma and gamma bar may or may not be, I will give you example right away, equivalent. One thing you should notice is I am using complex conjugation on linear operators, it is not Hermitian conjugation. So it's basis, this activity is basis dependent. Okay. There is, I don't, unless you have some further structure on the group, on the representation, complex conjugation is not possible to define. Okay. Hermitian conjugation can be defined from the scalar product, not complex conjugation, unless you introduce something like a complex structure, which I am not doing. Okay. So, if you take matrices, you just take matrix complex conjugation, and one can show that if you change the basis, this representation will undergo a similarity transformation. Okay. But that is enough for us. Now, let me give you an example. One, for SU2, I will tell the answer, later we will derive the answer. Okay. The irreducible representations are given by angular momentum J. Okay. Okay. So, their representation is gamma J. Okay. And if you are familiar with this notation, they are given by the Wigner 2 by J plus 1 by these matrices, where G is in SU2. These are rotation matrices. If you do not know it, we will do it later. And J takes values what? 0, half, I set h bar equal to 1. Okay, for each J you get. Now, here one can prove that gamma J bar is equivalent to gamma J. For all J. That is, a complex conjugate representation is equivalent to the original representation for angular for AC rotations, including. Okay. There is something funny, I will just say it in practice, in passing by mouth. If J were integral, you can actually make these representations real matrices. You can make these matrices real if J is integral. So, they are like actual physical rotations. But if J is half integral, you can never make the matrices actually real. But if you take a complex conjugate, you can conjugate it back to the original one. But you will not be able to, what happens is, these are equivalent, but the matrix which generates equivalence. Okay. So, what happens is, this matrix is dj or G bar is some matrix d j of G C inverse. The C is known, but this C depends on J. Okay. And Cj squared happens to be minus 1 to the power of 2j. It is what they call charge conjugation matrix. You can never diagonalize it. Square is minus 1, not plus 1. Okay. So, you can easily check that you cannot choose, because of this fact, you can never choose this C so that this bar goes away. Okay. This is a funny property, and it is of consequence when people discuss things like time reversal. But for SU3, okay, the 3 and 3 bar IRIs are not equivalent. So it is a representation dependent statement. Certain representations they are equivalent, certain representations they are not equivalent. For this matrix, let me say, let me call it Z, okay, which is the root of unity. This is belonging to SU3. It is unitary and determinant is 1. is a root, the cube root of unity, right. Now, if I take the complex conjugate of this, since exponential minus I 2 pi over 3 is not equal to exponential plus I 2 pi over 3, right. Z bar and Z have different eigenvalues, have different spectra. Their eigenvalues are changed. So, there is no way of finding, okay. So, there does not exist S such that S Z S inverse is Z bar. That proves the result, right. If there were a similarity transformation from here to here for SU3, not J, gamma and gamma bar for SU3, 3 and 3 bar for SU3, there will exist an S, a linear operator in the 3-dimensional space, which will take this element to its representative in the 3 bar, which is Z bar, Z bar, but there is no such thing, okay. So, the two representations are inequivalent, right. So, you should think of the Z as the image of an abstract element in SU3. That element is represented by this in the 3 by 3 representation 3, and is complex conjugate in 3 bar, and equivalence means that there is a similarity transformation between them, but there is no such thing, okay. So, the two representations are inequivalent, okay. So, given any representation, you can look at the complex conjugate representation, okay. So, let me go on, okay. The contragradient representation. Here what we do is we take d of G1, d of G2 is d of G1 G2. So, I now let me take the inverse of this. So, get d of G2 inverse, d of G1 inverse is equal to d of well, yeah, d of G1 G2 inverse, right. So, let me take a transpose of these matrices, okay. So, T is transpose, so I can take transpose of this, get D transpose G1 inverse, D transpose G2 inverse is equal to D transpose of G1 G2 inverse. Okay. So, you see from here that G going to D transpose G inverse is a representation. Is a contragradient representation. Since I have taken a transpose, again it is not defined on a Hilbert space intrinsically, okay. But if you do differential geometry, upstairs vectors and co-vectors, okay, that uses this contragradient, the representation whereby what they call covariant vectors and contravariant vectors transform are contragradient to each other, okay. but they are working in the reals. Here we are working in the complex things. So, transpose here is not intrinsically defined without further structure, but anyway in physics we use it all the time. Choose some basis and define it, and you will not go wrong, because if you change the basis, this thing will undergo a transformation, okay, similarity transformation. Then you can also do one more thing, okay, which I can call, I do not know what to call it. We have one more representation which we can manufacture, where I take G going to D transpose G inverse, I take complex conjugate bar. Okay. This is also a representation. I do not know what to call it. Call it, let us say, okay, let us say gamma transpose bar. So, the contra gradient, let me call it gamma T. It is really the dual representation in the reals. Okay. But anyway, we have these 4 things. Okay. But if you have a unitary representation, if gamma is a unitary representation, then these things sort of collapse, because you can see that gamma transpose, okay, these matrices, you have this thing, no? So, here the matrix element dg, yeah, unitary means star the complex conjugate and transpose is dot dog, okay. There is some unitary is not right. Complex conjugate is this Hermitian conjugation is inverse. So, dog inverse. So, from here you see that this, then if I transpose it again, okay, gamma, this gamma T, I want to, and bar, okay, what will happen is it will be equivalent to gamma, right. The last one will be equivalent to the original one, right, because I can transpose here and put the bar and get back the original one, and the middle two are the same, that is gamma bar is equivalent to gamma transpose. So, in that case you are left with only 2 different ones out of the 4, okay. Namely the complex conjugate one and the original one. For example, this typically happens for all the cases we encountered. For example, SU3 has in the same dimension you have 2 irreducible representations in general, 3 and 3 bar, 6 and 6 bar. Similar things happen with other groups also, okay. SU5 similar things happen, okay. These are groups which come in standard model, I mean quantum particle physics models quite routinely, okay. So, these are some activities you can do to create representations, but we should also remember about direct product of representations. Right. If we know, we have done this in the class, okay. If gamma A, B, okay, call them 2 representations, okay, DAB G are representations on two vector spaces VA, VB. We saw that the tensor product representation which we may call as gamma A cross gamma B acts on VA say cross VB in VA cross VB by dA G cross dB G on VA cross VB is acts by slots is DAG VA cross DBG VB. This is a new representation, we have seen this. Okay. I will state a problem which is very important for example, in angular momentum theory. It is called the Klebsch-Gordon problem, which was, I think, people like the names associated with that being Wigner and Raka. Okay. And Raka, well, I will tell what it is. But do you know what is the trace of this representation? What is a trace? This is an important thing. Trace of this representation. What is this? Can you guess? This is going to play an important role. The trace of the product, direct product matrices is what? In terms of the original, each individual factor. No. It is simply what? Okay. I claim it is DAG times trace DBG. Why? For I can do it explicitly. For choose a basis. Okay. Say EAI in VA and VB here. Okay. Then DAG cross DBG acting on EIA cross EJB. Let me write down the matrix of this linear operator. By definition, this is going to act here. Okay. So this will have this is going to act here. So it will be the matrix of D. Okay, I don't know what to call it. It will be called some E I prime A times this acting here. Let me call it D tilde A G I prime A I, and this is going to act here. So it is going to be E B G prime times D tilde B G G prime G. Right? But by definition, this is equal to E I prime A cross E B J prime of the matrix of the product, okay, is some matrix of the product, DAG cross DBG, let me put it like this, I prime J prime Ij. Because this base is labeled by 2 elements, so I have 2 elements here and 2 elements here. So you can compare this with this. So you see that this is equal to d tilde A G I prime I d tilde B G J prime J. So you take a trace. Taking a trace means set this equal to this in sum. So I put I prime equal to J prime, I equal to J in sum. Okay. So you get the answer immediately, right? So okay, with I prime equal to I, J prime equal to J gives answer. You will see this result turning up later when we discuss characters, that the characters are just the character, these traces are called characters. You have some very special properties, okay? And the characters are multiplying when you take direct products or representations, okay? Now I should say before I go further, what we may call, the physicists call the Clebsch-Gordan problem. Okay. What we here given two, let us say, irreducible representations, gamma A B of a group G. For us, the problem consists of 2 parts. Okay. A, write the tensor product of the 2 representations as a direct sum gamma C irreducible. Okay. Write the direct product as direct sum, assuming that you can completely reduce it, which will be the case in many of the groups we deal with. Okay. It may be that you cannot do the full reduction like it happened with translations, but for the kind of groups where this problem arises, this can be done. Okay. Sometimes people write this in a different way. Okay. Can write I will give you an example with rotations. Gamma A cross gamma B as some NABC gamma C. Okay. The notation upstairs downstairs I should have written this like this, okay, where okay, NCAB okay, are integers positive. I will explain to you. RHS sum is direct sum. Okay. C is summed over, but direct sum. I should have written plus. Okay. This is not, and when if you happen to get m times gamma c, means gamma c plus gamma c n times. Sometimes the same representation will occur more than once. Okay. Then if it occurs twice, you call it 1 plus 1 is 2 in that way. Okay. This way of writing, this NABC, in this way of writing are called fusion coefficients. Because you are fusing two elementary systems, and how many what is the output? This kind of expansion comes in quantum field theory. For example, if you discuss conformal field theories, you will see this expression many times. Okay. Now, for SU2, let me give you second part of the problem for us is the following: B. Find a basis, find an orthonormal basis I should say something else. Okay. If this is a reduction, okay, is a corresponding reduction of vector spaces, so gamma A is acting on VA and gamma B is acting on VB. Okay. Now I am going to find gamma C, okay, which are invariant subspaces. I mean, and VC are invariant subspace in here for gamma C. Okay. So you should be able to rewrite this as a direct sum. We will be able to rewrite it as a direct sum. So the problem is, the challenge is find orthonormal basis for gamma C for this should be called V prime C. Okay. This is not this thing, some VC, okay, for V prime C in terms of those of VAB. This problem turns out to be highly non-trivial, okay, in general, and it's very important for computational, for actual practical use. So let me show you, okay, how it works. Example, SU2, okay. I told you about the representation gamma J. Okay. We know that this part A will be gamma J1 cross gamma J2. You know the answer. If I add angular momenta J1 and J2, what are the angular momenta I get? You know it, no? From elementary atomic theory, you know. Yeah, what is it? Yeah, you got simply the direct sum of modulus of J1 minus J2 to J1 plus J2, right? Of gamma J. And each representation occurs only once. For SU3 this is not true. Okay. If you look at there is a famous example of, if you take the adjoint 8-dimensional representation of SU3, and you take its tensor product with itself, it occurs twice. 8 itself occurs twice. So this is SU2 is called simply reducible, in the sense that these things occur only once. Then okay. Say again?
I mean, can we take direct sum of vector space with itself?
Yeah, sure. Direct sum of the vector space with itself. Yes, you will get simply doubling of the vector space. Yes. If you take C1 one-dimensional vector space with itself, you get two-dimensional vector space. You will put them in a column. That's all. Okay. So B. Okay. Say gamma j 1 gamma ji acts on, let me call Vji with orthonormal basis say J1 M1 is M1 going from minus J1 plus 1 up to plus J1, right, and likewise J2 M2. So these are canonical bases in quantum mechanics, okay, corresponding to angular momentum J and third component angular momentum M. We will derive their properties later, including how group action completely, we will find the full group action, it is not difficult. These are orthonormal, okay. The gamma j on right acts, or let me call it Vj prime with orthonormal basis which is normally written as J1 J2 J M1 M2 M. These labels are telling you where they come from, their progeny. They are coming from taking the tensor product, okay. But when acting here with gamma j, it will only act on j and m in a canonical way. This object here can be rewritten in terms of the original things, okay. It is some things like this. This thing here is some C J1 J2 J M1 M2 M multiplying J1 M1 times J2 M2, where the summation is over this repeated indices, okay. You know what this is? These are the Clebsch-Gordon coefficients. They are completely known for SU2, and for SU3 also I believe they are probably known. There are tables. For higher groups I think there is maybe a scheme, but I do not know of explicit expressions. It is very interesting to check how these things behave, asymptotic behavior of this in angular momentum. So you try to understand what happens to them when J becomes very large, and J1, J2, all of them become large. Then you get classical addition of angular momenta. There is some classical formulae, and this is originally worked out by Regge. So the asymptotic behavior of this was originally worked out by Regge, and they have suddenly turned up in what they call loop quantum gravity, where and spin networks. So, there is a model for discretizing space time, so that you can do and to define quantum gravity non-perturbatively, okay, where each vertex, so they have some, they are doing some network, okay, in whole of space time. Then what happens is that at each network you have 3 angular momenta, and you attach, you have a rule to put the whole thing together. And when you have a picture like this, here what you attach is this Krebs-Scott coefficient J1 J2 J, M1 M2 M3, M2 M3 M. Then there is a way of putting them together, so that as suppose the whole thing closes, you will get a particular expression which is regarded as a partition function for a quantum gravity model. Okay. So this is very common. People doing spin networks on spin networks for quantum gravity use it quite routinely. Okay. These days, loop quantum gravity people, Abhay Ashtekar and co. Okay. You see many papers on this in the literature. Okay. So it is originating here, and the properties of this Krebs-Scott coefficient for large values of angular momentum. Okay. When you get some kind of a classical expression. The original proposal along these lines is due to Penrose. I don't know what led him to this, that I do not know, because for some reason these Krebs-Scott coefficients have something to do with the Riemann tensor, which I don't know how. Somewhere discretizing exists, so that some defect angle turns up as a Riemann tensor of that particular triangulation, but I don't know this stuff. Okay. Okay. Now, there is something you should know, which can be a source of confusion. There is something called tensor product of groups. Okay. Direct product of groups. GH. Okay. This is a group. Okay. So G cross H, whose elements are GH. So it's a Cartesian product, just a pair. It's a group. With okay, G1 H1, G2 H2 is G1 G2, H1 H2. Okay. Here, if say DG DH are representations of GH, then this mapping can gives a representation of G cross H. That's obvious. Okay. But here is a warning, this may not be faithful. But this representation may not be faithful. Let me give an example. G equal G and H are SU, GH are SU2. Spin half, okay. So let me choose DGH, okay, as, let me choose them to 2 cross 2 representations. Okay. So what I am doing is, okay, so then above is G comma H goes into G tensor H, okay, where we regard GH as 2 cross 2 for simplicity. So this is a 2 by 2 matrix, 2 by 2 matrix. I am sending them to the direct product. It's a representation. It is not faithful. What do you mean by faithful? It is not a bijective. There is a kernel in this mapping. What is a kernel? That is, there are several elements which go into the same element. Which are they? Elements which are distinguished here are not distinguished here. Can you tell me what they are? It should be, but since, okay, 1 1 goes to, right, 1 1 goes into 1 1, okay, and minus 1 goes into again, right, minus 1 cross minus 1, but that is 1 1. But this is tensor product, this is Cartesian product. So these are the same, right? So there is a kernel, okay. Physically, it's not a mathematical curiosity, because this is the existence of this kernel means that if I put 2 spin half particles together, I get integral spin particles. That's the kind of thing that you are getting, right? The center minus 1 corresponds to a 2 pi rotation, but the 2 pi rotations are merging into a 1 plus 1. 2 pi rotation doesn't give minus sign. If you rotate both sides by 2 pi, you don't get a minus sign. Okay? So just a physical meaning in terms of angular momentum. In terms of, for example, statistics of the particles change. So this has some consequences. I mean, you will find this example will come back later, and because of this cancellation of signs in tensor products, factors in tensor products, you will find that there are cases where of groups which we will discuss later, this has no faithful irreducible representation, but it has non-faithful reducible, it has no faithful irreducible representation, but there are faithful reducible representations. Okay. But if you try to take them apart, some centers will be, some elements will get identified. Okay. And again we can interpret what is happening. Now just as a final thing today, okay, which is quite curious, okay, but we will come to this importance of this later. Suppose A is an associative algebra, that means I will not formally define it, it is just like linear operators. Okay. So you can take products and it is associative. So vector space with a product defined. And suppose if, okay, rho, okay, A to rho A is a representation of A we found I can even write, yeah, it's okay. For algebras, it is not true, okay. Say rho I, let's make two of them, it is not true that rho 1 cross rho 2 is not in general a representation of A. It is unlike the group. The reason is, okay, take rho 1, linear, the problem is a linearity, okay. If A goes to rho A, B goes to rho B, right. If it is a representation, we want rho 1 cross rho 2 on A plus B. If it were a representation, rho I am telling it is linear in each factor. The question is this equal to rho 1 A plus B cross rho 2 A plus B? Answer is no, okay. If, because we are defining, if I, in the case left hand side by definition is, I am making some mistake. That is not what I want. This is not what. Is this equal to rho 1 plus cross rho 2 on A plus rho 1 cross rho 2 on B? It has to be linear in the factors. The answer is no, because this is rho 1 of A plus B cross rho 2 of A plus B. So, if you have a group, one of the most important property of a group of symmetries is you have elementary systems transforming with some symmetry, you can put them together and you can tell what is the symmetry of the interacting composite system. For a generic algebra you cannot do this. So, algebras cannot acquire as such as symmetries, but for half algebras, this is where the half algebra comes. Okay. There is a way to, we will come later, to compose representations. Let me just say that what I mean here, of course this is linear, okay. Rho I of A plus B is equal to rho I A plus rho I B, right. It is a representation of an algebra, so it has to be linear and it has to be rho I of A times B must be rho I of A plus times rho I of B, okay. So, it is a representation of the algebra, and I want to see if I can define this thing on A plus B is still a representation, and the answer is no. The reason is that if it were, it will be linear in A and B, but you can work it out by this rule here. This is rho 1 of A plus B times rho 2 A plus B, that is not equal to the right hand side, because there are cross terms. For example, rho 1 B times rho 2 A, okay. And likewise, so the group, the property will not of the representation of the algebra will be lost, okay. So, we cannot imagine, conceive of using algebras as symmetries, okay, without further rules, without something new happening, and so group has much more structure, okay. But it turns out that the so called half algebras, which we shall deal with later, somehow maintains all these essential ingredients, so they can be used as symmetries, okay, and that is their importance and why they are turning up, for example, in discussions of things like conformal field theories. I think I'll stop here.